Just as corner entry can be done much faster when you understand the secrets of trail braking, corner exit can be done much faster when you understand the secrets of PowerOn slip. There's so much more to a good corner exit than just picking your moment and flooring it. I will show you the importance of PowerOn slip, using the throttle in a way that sustains the slip angle and cornering forces you created when you were turning into it, allowing you to get on power much earlier and making you significantly faster overall. This video is recorded in iRacing because the camera controls are brilliant, but this guide applies to almost all rear-wheel drive cars in almost all decent racing simulators. iRacing, Le Mans Ultimate, Assetto Corsa, even Gran Turismo. However, I recommend you make sure you've seen both my trail braking and slip angle videos for this one, as it'll provide a good background for what's to come. Let's go! Thanks to GT Omega for their consistent support of the channel. You can get 5% off GT Omega cockpits, rigs, chairs, desks and accessories using code DannyLee, such as the prime rig I've used for the last 4 years, or the core standing desk, which is a must-have for the days spent writing these scripts. However, I can't create a guide about throttle control without also showcasing the VRS Direct Force Pro pedals. These are the smoothest pedal set I've ever used, so if you're looking for an upgrade, this is my top pedal pick. Get 5% off the VRS store using the link in the description. The ability to actively include power, and not just braking, in your cornering technique is one of the numerous secrets behind a fast lap time. And the worst thing about this is that it's almost impossible to detect just by sight alone. You would never know it's happening unless you are shown the data. Here's an example, and don't worry if you get confused with this, things will be reiterated and broken down. This is me in a Porsche Cup car at Silverstone, going around Luffield, a very long corner in second gear. Ask yourself, in a powerful car like the Porsche Cup, which has no traction control, how should you apply the power as you exit this corner? Perhaps it would be something like this, with a smooth pedal press which builds the power up nice and softly so that the rear wheels can maintain solid traction. That would be wrong, at least if you wanted to go as fast as possible. Watch my throttle input as I make the transition from braking to power on. Notice how it jumps from 0% to around 50% pretty quickly and holds there for some time until I pick my moment to fully power out. Instead of a smooth, gradual power on to ensure traction, I choose a stepped power on, which seems to happen in two halves, the initial step and then later blending into full power. Why? Well, it's because I actually want the rear end of the car to be ever so slightly loose, so that it can corner as hard as possible by using the magic of slip angle, and I'm doing it with the throttle. See how the back of the car is ever so slightly hung out to the side? My front wheels cross the line here, and my rear wheels cross that same line here. The car is in a very narrow slide whilst powering through the middle of the turn and accelerating out. This right here is slip angle at work, known as yaw angle to be exact, but slip angle makes it easier to relate to and say, and it works because it allows the rear of the car to move more freely, causing less resistance to the car trying to turn as a whole. Here's an example of that principle that you can literally do right now. Stand up and try twisting your foot to point your toes in another direction. A lot of you will have instinctively lifted either your heel or your toes in order to do this, and do you know why? Because it's easier to rotate your foot when you're not fighting against 2 points of contact with the ground. If you try to twist your foot without lifting any part of it off the ground, it's still doable, but it is harder because now you have 2 points of contact on the ground that are resisting the twist. And that's why you sometimes want a little bit of free float at the rear of the car. You can't lift your car's back end up to reduce the friction resisting the turn like you just did with your foot. Instead, you can create power on slip to allow the rear to slip and move and make it easier for the whole car to pivot around a turn. Not loads, just a bit. In my first example, by using this stepped throttle technique whereby I move from 0% to mid-throttle quickly, I'm keeping the car in a state of slip, essentially by not allowing it to stop. When I switch quickly and decisively from braking to throttle, I'm not allowing the rear of the car to grip up and bring an end to the subtle slide I created on corner entry. When done right, this feels like the car is cornering just as well in the power out phase as it does in the trail braking phase. If I'd used a smooth progressive power on instead of a stepped power on, it would have given the rear tyres extra grip and traction as the car's weight shifts backwards, but there will also be not enough power to push the tyres past that point again and back into slip. Being too slow and hesitant with the throttle here would lead to the car pushing wide due to understeer. It would suddenly float away from the corner apex. If you're not currently employing the throttle technique demonstrated in this video, you're probably avoiding running wide by just delaying the power, but that gap is exactly where the lap time is. Look at how early in the corner my technique allows me to start applying real effective power and pick up speed. I'm accelerating before I'm halfway through the corner, and it's only possible because my throttle technique keeps the car cornering hard in that sweet spot between full traction, which I don't want because it will cause understeer and loss of turning force, and no traction, which I also don't want because it will mean a spin or a slow and slippery exit from the turn. In the middle is where that sweet spot lies. Now, that was a lot of info, a lot of points, and if you're anything like me, it helps to just go over it again with a different example in a different context, so here's another one. This time it's Daytona, turn 5 in a GTP. As I curl around the corner, you'll see the same thing happening with my throttle. Midway through the turn, I transition onto the throttle in a particular way, with an initial step, then blend into full power. It's not a smooth line from 0% to 100%, it's a stepped application. As I swoop into the apex, you can see the whole car is in a state of yaw or slip angle as I prefer to class it, where a tiny 4-wheel slide is effectively at play. The rear wheels don't follow the front wheel's footprint, instead the whole car is slightly swung out at the rear, it's a slight slide. By decisively switching to the throttle with a healthy but controlled dose of power, I maintain that state of slip angle for nearly the entire corner. The Porsche Cup and the GTP are two different cars with two different styles and two vastly different speeds, but they are nonetheless both rear-wheel drive with a lot of power. This is simply to say that if you pick up and learn this throttle technique being displayed here, it will benefit you in many cars. If you didn't use this technique, if you were just smoothly phasing in the power in a progressive style, then you would have to wait longer to apply the power. This gap in acceleration could be worth half a tenth per corner, and if you multiply that by however many corners per lap this could apply to, that could amount to multiple tenths per lap. When you're looking at the gap between yourself and the top flight drivers, this is a part of it, but it's a part that you can learn. These two examples were fairly similar in nature, second gear, long corners which happen to produce similar throttle inputs. When the aim of the game is to provide just enough power to the rear wheels to just float over the edge of grip, then you have to adapt this technique to the situation, corner to corner, car to car. This means that in a first gear corner, for example, to produce corner exit slip angle, you'd only need a small amount of throttle because you have so much torque in lower gears. You can easily lose all traction if you're not careful. Whereas in a fourth gear corner, you may need to use full throttle just to produce that corner exit slip angle, and there's little risk of losing the back end. In faster corners, I will make a much more aggressive initial step, if not just full throttle straight away. At these high speeds, you need to be quick and complete with the throttle so that enough power is given to the rear wheels to help the car swap from a state of corner entry slip to power on slip, without giving the rear wheels a chance to hook up and damp down those cornering forces that you had going. You'll notice how my pedal inputs show basically no gap between coming off the brakes and going onto the throttle. It's almost like being passed from one hand to the other, from brake to throttle. And that's a result of learning and honing these two things. So you might have a couple of questions about this. What about tyre wear? Surely sliding the car around like this every turn will come at some cost of tyre wear, even if it's tightly controlled. Yeah, it will, but if you're worried about that, then it's even more important to learn and perfect this. It's my view that if you learn what makes you faster, you will understand much better what not to do if you want to be nice to your tyres. On a qualifying lap, you would look to absolutely squeeze every bit of lap time out of the car, whereas if you run a 40 lap stint, you wouldn't. Knowing how to squeeze every last drop also means knowing how not to, basically. Secondly, what about different powered cars? My example showed popular middle powered cars with a modern layout, but if you're in an MX-5 with much less power, then as you can imagine, your ability to generate power on slip angle is going to be limited at higher speeds because there's just not enough power to do so. Finally, how does traction control mix with this technique? Surely to do this properly you need traction control off? No, definitely not. You might be surprised to hear that GT and prototype traction control systems, as in proper motorsport grade traction control, are actually a help, not a hindrance, to power on slip. You can tune the traction control systems to allow you to hit the sweet spot, whilst also making it hard to overstep it, almost like guardrails on a bowling alley. Next time you're in a GT3 or a GTP with traction control, try playing with the settings until you find that sweet spot for a certain corner, whereby it will allow just enough power on slip to push the car around the corner faster, while still being very controllable. It's actually normal to lean on a traction control system as a performance tool that can be tuned and refined. Oh, and one last thing, of course, setups. Setups greatly affect how the car reacts when you try to engage power on slip angle on corner exits. The limited slip differential is specifically designed and tuned to achieve specific behaviour from the rear wheels when you get onto the power. And one of the key elements of a good setup as a whole is to make it easier for you to achieve perfect power on slip, as it is certainly possible to make a car extremely tricky or consistent and manageable with setup changes alone. This is to highlight one thing: power on slip is something race cars are designed to be able to achieve, and is also a major reason why rear wheel drive is the main drivetrain of choice for circuit motorsport. It's a pretty big deal. Ultimately, power on slip is one of those hidden techniques that is extremely hard to see from the outside unless you know what you're looking for, hence why I make this guide. Those that master this method will find themselves being able to get on the power earlier in corners and therefore become faster, yet preserving the stability and consistency. This technique is not risky when it's done right, and you will find yourself beating previous records by multiple tenths if you were not previously doing anything like this. So get out there, get on the throttle earlier but more confidently, and discover the insane lap time gains through power on slip. And that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this guide. Let me know if you're confused about any of this or if you get good results. Your feedback and questions are more than welcome, and I'll try to help out the best I can. Cheers once again to GT Omega, 5% off with code DannyLee on their shops, and shout out to the butteriest pedal set and top overall pick for me, the VRS Direct Force Pro pedals, 5% off with the link in the description. Cheers again.